The most humiliating moment of my life lasted exactly 6 seconds. 6 seconds. That's how long it took for my own daughter to look straight into my eyes and pretend she'd never met me, not because she hated me, not because we'd had a fight, not because I'd done anything wrong, because I was embarrassing. My name is Grant Holloway. I'm 58 years old. For 31 years, I owned one of the busiest auto repair shops in Cedar Ridge. People trusted me. Teachers, police officers, doctors. Even the mayor brought his truck to my garage. I worked 6 days a week so my wife, Linda, could stay home when our daughter was little. I missed birthdays, school plays, fishing trips, vacations. I always told myself I'd make it up to my daughter one day. Life had other plans. Linda passed away 5 years ago after a sudden brain aneurysm. One ordinary Tuesday morning, she kissed me goodbye before grocery shopping. By lunchtime, she was gone. After that, everything changed. The garage didn't feel the same. The house certainly didn't. Eventually, I sold the business. Not because it was failing, because every wrench I picked up reminded me of the life we'd built together. Retirement wasn't what people imagine. It wasn't golf, or beaches, or lazy mornings. It was silence. A silence so loud that I started taking long drives just to hear another person's voice. One afternoon, my neighbor mentioned driving for Uber. You meet people. You stay busy. And you make enough to spoil the grandkids. I laughed. 6 weeks later, I signed up. Not because I needed money. My savings were comfortable. I needed purpose. Some passengers ignored me. Some talked the whole ride. Some cried after breakups. Some celebrated job promotions. Every trip reminded me that everyone was carrying something invisible, including me. My daughter Kelsey hated the idea. Dad, you don't need to do this. I know. So why are you? Because sitting alone in that house is slowly killing me. She sighed. You've earned retirement. I've earned feeling useful. She never argued after that, at least not out loud. Kelsey was 28, marketing executive, always impeccably dressed, always moving, always chasing another promotion. She lived downtown with her fiancé, Logan Pierce, a young investment consultant whose suits probably cost more than my first pickup truck. We didn't dislike each other. We simply lived in different worlds. Whenever I visited, everything felt polished. Designer furniture, imported coffee, conversations about networking, branding, executive retreats, and social circles I couldn't pronounce. Still, Kelsey always hugged me goodbye. She always said, "Love you, Dad." I believed her. Then came Friday night, the night that changed everything. It started like every other shift. Airport pickups, dinner crowds, concert traffic. Around 9:30, a request popped onto my screen. Pickup location, the Monarch Rooftop Lounge, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. I almost declined. Parking there was a nightmare, but surge pricing was high. I accepted. 5 minutes later, I pulled into the valet lane. The hostess waved passengers toward waiting rides. Then I saw her, Kelsey, standing with 6 sharply dressed coworkers, champagne glasses, designer heels, everyone laughing. For a second, I smiled. What were the odds? I rolled down my window. Kelsey. She looked over. Her smile disappeared instantly. Not surprise, not happiness, panic, real panic. She hurried toward my car before anyone else noticed. She leaned down beside the driver's window and whispered, "Dade," before I could answer. She glanced over her shoulder at her coworkers, then back at me. Her voice dropped even lower. "Please, just pretend you don't know me." I blinked. "What? They think I'm getting a normal Uber." I laughed awkwardly. "What difference does it make?" "It just does." She wasn't smiling anymore. "They don't know my dad drives people." I stared at her. "I'm not following," shot her forehead. "They think you're retired." "No, I am." "No."
Wow.
"They think you travel." I frowned. "Kelsey." She looked desperate. "They're all watching. Please, just say good evening. Don't call me sweetheart. Don't ask about Logan. And whatever you do, don't tell them you're my father." Every word felt heavier than the last. Then she said the one sentence I don't think I'll ever forget. "You driving Uber makes me look." She stopped herself, but it was too late. I quietly finished the sentence for her. "Cheap." She looked away. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." One of her coworkers called out, "Kelsey, you coming?" She forced a bright smile, then looked back at me, almost pleading. "I'm begging you. For 15 minutes. Just be my driver." I looked at my daughter, the little girl who used to sit on my shoulders to watch 4th of July fireworks, the teenager who cried in my arms after her first heartbreak, the woman whose college tuition I paid by working 70-hour weeks. She was ashamed of me, ashamed enough to erase me. I slowly unlocked the doors. "Good evening, ma'am." She gave the tiniest nod, then climbed into the back seat, not beside me, behind me, like every other passenger. Her coworkers piled in laughing. One of the men leaned forward. "Busy night." I smiled into the rearview mirror. It usually is. Kelsey never looked at me once. She pulled out her phone, pretending to answer emails, pretending I didn't exist, pretending I wasn't the man who had spent his entire life making sure she never had to wonder whether someone would show up for her. As I pulled away from the restaurant, one of the women in the back seat laughed and said, "Kelsey, your dad must be living the dream somewhere." Everyone chuckled. Kelsey smiled.
"Yeah,
"That's exactly where he wants to be." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure that was true. Then, halfway through the ride, one of the executives leaned forward to read the driver profile on the dashboard. His smile suddenly disappeared. He looked from the screen to me, then slowly toward Kelsey, and quietly asked, "Holloway." The blood drained from Kelsey's face. The car suddenly became quiet, not because anyone told a joke that didn't land, not because the music stopped, because everyone had heard the same name, Holloway. The executive sitting behind me leaned closer. He looked at the small driver profile displayed on the back of my seat. Grant Holloway. Then he looked at Kelsey. "You two have the same last name." Kelsey forced a laugh. "It's a common name." He frowned. "Not really." Another coworker joined in. "Wet." She looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Grant Holloway? Didn't you own Holloway Automotive?" I nodded politely. "I did." Her eyes widened. "My dad used your shop for years. You saved his business truck after another garage said it was totaled." I smiled. "I'm glad we could help." Before anyone could say another word, Kelsey interrupted. "Coincidence? They're different Holloways." The lie came so quickly, even she seemed surprised she'd said it. I looked at her in the mirror. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. The executive frowned again. "Really?" Because he studied my face. "You actually look alike." Nobody laughed. Kelsey immediately changed the subject. "So, who's ready for Napa next weekend?" The conversation slowly drifted toward work. Wine tours, corporate retreats, promotion rumors, stock options. I stayed silent, listening, driving, pretending the knot in my chest wasn't growing tighter by the minute. About 10 minutes later, we stopped outside a luxury condominium. 2 passengers climbed out.
good night. See everyone Monday."
Then another stop. Another passenger left. Soon, only 3 people remained. Kelsey, the executive who had recognized my name, and a woman named Naomi Ellis, one of Kelsey's senior managers. Naomi sat directly behind me. She had barely spoken all evening. Instead, she watched. She noticed everything. When we reached the next building, the executive gathered his briefcase. Before getting out, he smiled at me. "It was nice meeting you, Mr. Holloway." "You too." Then he looked at Kelsey. "I'll see you Monday." As she smiled, "See you." The door closed. Now, only Naomi and Kelsey remained. The atmosphere changed instantly. Naomi leaned forward, quietly. So she looked at Kelsey. "Would you like to explain why you just lied to everyone?" Kelsey froze. "I didn't lie." "You absolutely did." Naomi glanced toward me. "Unless this gentleman just happens to share your last name and your eyes." Silence. Then Naomi asked me directly, "Monseka Holloway, are you Kelsey's father?" I answered honestly, "Yes." Naomi slowly leaned back. "I thought so." Kelsey covered her face. "Oh my God." Naomi wasn't angry. She looked disappointed. "Can I ask why you hid it?" Kelsey hesitated, then quietly admitted, "Because..." She swallowed. I didn't want people to think she couldn't finish. Naomi waited. "Finally, that I came from..." Another pause. "A blue-collar family." Those words hit harder than anything she'd said outside the restaurant. Not because of the phrase itself, because of what it meant. Everything Linda and I had built, everything we'd sacrificed, had become something our daughter wanted to erase. Naomi stared at her. "Kelsey, my mother cleaned hotel rooms. My father drove city buses. I've never hidden either of them." Kelsey looked stunned. Naomi continued. "Our CEO grew up in a trailer park. Our chief financial officer stocked grocery shelves through college." She shook her head. "You know what impresses successful people? Character, not pretending your parents are someone else." The rest of the drive passed in complete silence. When we reached Naomi's building, she opened the door, then stopped. She looked back at me. "Mr. Holloway, thank you for getting us home safely." "My pleasure." She smiled warmly. I hope your daughter realizes one day how lucky she is." Then she left. The door closed. Only Kelsey and I remained. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry. I kept my eyes on the road." "Were you embarrassed because I drive Uber? Or because I'm your father?" She immediately answered, "No." Then, more quietly, "Just the Uber." I nodded once. "I see. You don't understand. Then help me." She sighed. "Everyone at work grew up wealthy. They vacation in Europe. They belong to country clubs. They all think I come from that world. And you were afraid I'd ruin the image." Tears filled her eyes. "I've worked so hard. I didn't want tonight to change how they see me." I finally looked at her through the mirror. "Kelsey, I worked hard too, so your life could be different from mine. But I never imagined you'd someday be ashamed of where that life came from." She began crying, real crying, not dramatic, not loud, quiet, broken. When we reached her apartment building, she didn't move. Instead, she whispered, "Please don't tell anyone." I frowned. "Tell who?" "Logan." I looked back. "He doesn't know." She slowly shook her head. "I told him you retired after selling the company, that you spend most of your time traveling." My heart sank. "You've been lying to your fiancé for almost 2 years. Before I could respond, her phone rang. The dashboard screen displayed the Bluetooth caller ID, Logan Carliange. She immediately answered. "Hey." His voice filled the car speakers. "Baby all. I've got great news. My parents want to have brunch tomorrow. They're excited to finally meet your father." Kelsey closed her eyes. Then Logan laughed and added the sentence that made every hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Oh, and my dad says he already knows Grant Holloway. I can't wait to see him again." Kelsey slowly turned toward me. For the first time that night, she looked terrified. The ride ended. Neither of us got out. Logan's words echoed through the silent car. "My dad says he already knows Grant Holloway." Kelsey slowly ended the call. Her hands were shaking. "You know Logan's father?" I stared through the windshield. "I know a lot of fathers." "No," she looked at me. "I mean him." I thought for a moment. "What's his father's name?" "Victor Pierce." The name hit me instantly. I leaned back against the seat. "Victor Pierce. I haven't heard that name in nearly 20 years. Kelsey frowned. "You really know him?" "I do." She swallowed. "How?" I smiled faintly. "Used to own Pierce Construction." Her eyes widened. "That's Logan's family company." "I know." She looked confused. "I thought you only fixed cars." "I did. But Victor and I became friends after his company trucks kept breaking down." I laughed softly. He was terrible at remembering oil changes. For the first time all night, a small smile almost crossed Kelsey's face. Then it disappeared. What was he like? Honest, proud, the kind of man who paid every invoice the same day. I paused. "And very loyal." She stared at me. "Then, why have I never heard his name?" "Because after I sold the garage, we slowly lost touch." Silence filled the car again. Finally she whispered, "Dade, please, don't tell him." I turned toward her. "Tell him what?" "That I lied." I looked at my daughter. She wasn't worried about hurting me anymore. She was terrified of losing Logan. "I won't embarrass you." Relief washed across her face. Then I added quietly, "But I won't lie for you either." She lowered her eyes. "I know." The next morning, I stood in my closet staring at 2 jackets, one old brown sport coat, one navy blazer Linda had bought me before she passed away. "You'll need something nice someday." She had smiled while insisting I try it on. I hadn't worn it in years. I brushed imaginary dust from the sleeve, then put it on. At exactly 11:30 all, I pulled into the Willow Room, an elegant restaurant overlooking the river. Luxury cars lined the entrance. A valet approached. "Reservation, Holloway." He checked his tablet. "Mr. Pierce is expecting you." Inside, crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors. A hostess escorted me toward a private dining room. I could already hear voices. Then the doors opened. Kelsey stood first. The color instantly drained from her face. "Dade Wall." She whispered it like a warning. Across the table sat Logan, early 30s, confident, perfectly tailored suit. Beside him, an older man slowly stood. Silver hair, broad shoulders, sharp blue eyes. Victor Pierce. For 3 seconds, neither of us moved. Then Victor suddenly broke into a huge smile. "Grant." He walked straight toward me. Before I could react, he wrapped both arms around me in a bear hug. "I'll be damned. I've been trying to find you for years." The room fell silent. Victor stepped back. "You haven't aged a day." "I definitely have." He laughed loudly. "No, you've just gotten grayer." Logan looked completely confused. Dade Wall. You two actually know each other? Victor looked at his son as though the answer were obvious. Know each other? He laughed again. This man practically saved my company. Everyone looked at me. Victor continued. 22 years ago, our biggest contract depended on one fleet of trucks. Every mechanic in town told me I'd lose them for weeks. He pointed at me. Grant worked 3 straight nights. Never went home, never complained. My trucks rolled out Monday morning. He smiled proudly. If he hadn't done that, I would have gone bankrupt. I looked down. It wasn't just me, my crew. Victor cut me off. Your crew stayed because you stayed. He turned toward Logan. Everything we built afterward. The office you're working in today. The house you grew up in. It all started because this man refused to quit. Logan slowly looked at me. Then at Kelsey, his expression changed. Confusion became admiration. Dad, you've never told me this story. Victor laughed. I've told it 100 times. You probably weren't listening. Everyone chuckled. Everyone except Kelsey. She sat frozen. Victor suddenly frowned. What's wrong? Nobody answered. He looked from me to Kelsey, then back again. Did I miss something? Logan smiled awkwardly. Actually, Kelsey never mentioned you two knew each other. Victor blinked. What do you mean? Logan laughed nervously. She said her father retired years ago. Victor looked genuinely puzzled. Retired? He turned toward me. Aren't you still working? I drive Uber a few evenings a week. Victor nodded proudly. I heard. Good for you. The room went completely still. Victor smiled. I've always admired people who stay active. My father worked until he was 80. He looked at Logan. Never looked down on honest work. Doesn't matter whether someone builds houses, repairs engines, or drives people safely home. Then he looked directly at Kelsey. His smile slowly faded. You told everyone your father was retired. She couldn't answer. Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. Kelsey, were you embarrassed to say your father drives Uber? Tears instantly filled her eyes. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Victor looked at his son, then quietly said, Logan, would you give us a minute? Logan nodded. Everyone slowly left the private dining room. Within moments, only 3 people remained. Victor, Kelsey, and me. Victor pulled out his phone, opened something, then turned the screen toward Kelsey. It was an old photograph, 22 years old. A younger Victor standing beside a younger me covered in grease, laughing outside my garage. On the back of the photo, Linda had written one sentence in blue ink. The richest men are the ones whose children are proud to call them dad. Victor looked at Kelsey, then quietly asked, tell me honestly, when was the last time you made your father feel rich? The room was silent. Victor's question hung in the air. When was the last time you made your father feel rich? Kelsey couldn't answer. She stared at the old photograph, at the handwritten sentence, then at me. Finally, she broke, I'm sorry. Her voice cracked so badly it barely sounded like her own. I've been horrible. Victor quietly sat back down. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking what happened. Kelsey covered her face. I spent so many years trying to fit into a world that wasn't mine. I convinced myself I had to erase the world I came from. She looked at me. I didn't realize I was erasing you too. Every word hurt, but every word was honest. I pulled out the chair beside her, sat down. Kelsey, she slowly looked up. You know what your mother used to tell me? She shook her head. When you were little, you'd introduce me to everyone. I smiled through the tears. The cashier, the waitress. You'd grab my hand and proudly say, this is my dad. A tear rolled down her cheek. I remember. I do too. You never once cared that I smelled like engine oil. You thought I was the strongest man alive. She started crying harder. I wish I could go back. So do I. Victor quietly stood. I'll give you both some privacy. As he reached the door, he stopped. Without turning around, he said, Grant, I've spent 20 years telling my son that success starts with character. He glanced toward Kelsey. I think today we all got reminded why. Then he quietly left. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, Kelsey whispered, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I smiled sadly. Maybe not today. She closed her eyes. But if you spend the rest of your life earning it, that's enough for me. She suddenly wrapped both arms around me. Not the polite hugs we'd exchanged for years. The desperate kind. The kind children give their parents when they're scared. She cried into my shoulder. I'm so sorry. I lied. I know. I was ashamed. I gently kissed the top of her head. I know. I don't want to be that person anymore. I believed her. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't protecting an image. She was protecting a relationship. When we walked back into the dining room, everyone immediately looked at us. Logan stood first. Concern covered his face. Kelsey, she walked straight to him. Before anyone spoke, she took a deep breath. I lied to you. The room became quiet. I told you my father retired and traveled because, she looked down, because I was embarrassed that he drives Uber. Logan didn't interrupt. She continued. I made him pretend he didn't know me. Tears rolled down her face again. I hurt the best man I've ever known. Silence. Then Logan slowly walked over. He didn't look at Kelsey. He looked at me, extended his hand. Miss Evan. Holloway. I'm sorry she made you feel that way. I shook his hand. You don't owe me an apology. He smiled. I know, but I wanted to say it anyway. Then he turned toward Kelsey. I didn't fall in love with you because of your background. I fell in love with you because I thought you were honest. She nodded. I want to be. Then start today. Victor smiled proudly. No, that's the only business advice worth giving. Everyone laughed. The tension finally broke. 3 weeks later, I was driving another Friday evening. A ride request appeared. Pickup location, the same rooftop restaurant. I smiled. What are the odds? When I pulled into the valet lane, I saw Kelsey standing with the same co-workers. This time, she wasn't nervous. She wasn't looking over her shoulder. She walked directly toward my car. Before anyone could say a word, she opened the passenger door instead of the back seat, then turned toward her co-workers with the biggest smile I'd seen in years. She wrapped one arm around my shoulder and proudly announced, "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my dad, the hardest working man I've ever known." The valet smiled. The co-workers smiled. Naomi smiled. One of the executives laughed. So this is the famous Grant Holloway. Kelsey nodded proudly. The very one. Naomi looked at me. I told you she'd figure it out. I grinned. You did. Then something happened that caught me completely off guard. Kelsey reached into her purse, pulled out a small laminated card. She handed it to me. It was an Uber driver appreciation plaque. Across the top, she'd had engraved just 6 words, "My reputation and starts MYD80." I laughed. Then I cried, right there in front of everyone. And for the first time since Linda died, I didn't feel like I was driving strangers anymore. I felt like I was finally home.